Welcome to GoPowerCat.com's Friday Shoot-Around, sponsored by Riverbank Brewing. Now, let's head into the studio.
Here to the Friday Shoot-Around, I am Ryan Gilbert. As always, we are joined by former Kansas State guard Clint Stewart. It's now six losses in a row for Kansas State. Most recently, back-to-back since we've last talked to you here on the Shoot-Around, K-State losing at Allen Fieldhouse to Kansas, and then road loss to Baylor on Wednesday. Clint will dive into kind of both of those losses before we take a look ahead. As always, Clint, we're sponsored by Riverbank Brewing, but you go to Allen Fieldhouse, Clint. I'm sure that's frustrating for you. You know how you know what it takes to win there. You know how it's done. Obviously, Kansas State kind of got punched in the teeth early on and did show some fight at Kansas. Kansas State made it a two-possession game kind of late into the second half, but Clint, when you start the way that you start, down 14-0, it's nearly impossible to win in that venue.
Yeah, I mean, when you dig a hole that deep in Allen Fieldhouse, of all places, I mean, it's really tough because you almost got to fight two times as hard to get back out of it. And you really got to have things start breaking your way, to get back out of it and overcome. And, I love to see our guys that didn't give up, right? I mean, they were able to fight back and obviously have a chance at the end to try to win the basketball game. But it makes you wonder, if we would have started a little bit faster and been ready from the very beginning, which KU is going to come out in a rivalry game at home. They're going to try to come out fast and punch in the mouth, and we got to be able to withstand those and punch back, early. And I thought, you look at the difference of the game, down 14-0 or so at the very beginning. We lose by 10. I mean, you could say that's where the game was won and lost right there in the first few minutes of the game. So, I did some good things, but like I said, you got to be able to do it for the entire 40 minutes, not 35, not 36. From the very beginning in the jump all the way to the end, you got to play really, really flawless basketball to be able to win in Allen Fieldhouse.
And it was also the second half, too. Jerome Tang had to burn a timeout before the first media timeout coming out of the locker room the second time. Having it happen once, I think it's fair to say that K-State was maybe rattled, a little shell-shocked with the environment there from the opening tip. But when the same thing happens in the second half, that's a little bit more troublesome. And, not only the first half, but the second half. If Kansas State just has good starts from the get-go in both halves, it's not unreasonable to think that K-State goes in and pulls off the upset.
Yeah, I think some of that starts with, getting stops you got to get stops on the defensive end. I think that kind of propels some of the offense and obviously allows you to get out and transition a little bit as well. But then you just feel better, right? When you get stops, like, okay, we're here. And then if the ball's not following, you're still in the game early because you got stops, and so you really got to bring the energy on that side of the ball. And then, like I said, hopefully on the other side, you're able to make some shots.
With a group of so many newcomers, and, we've talked about this all season long, the gelling process and some of those things early on, but here against Kansas, was this a nice example of the downsides of building a new roster year in and year out? Because when you go into an atmosphere like that, some guys have played in atmospheres like that, but others haven't. But just as a team, when you haven't collectively played in anything like that, with all due respect to the prior road games at TCU, Oklahoma State, there's no way to simulate what that atmosphere is like.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter, how much a coach can tell you or how much a former player can tell you. I'm like, it doesn't matter until you're actually in that environment and, you're the tip-off's happening and you're trying to talk about, hey, I got this guy. Hey, make sure you got him, and knowing the teammates can't hear you talking, because and you can be face-to-face and they can't hear you talking. I mean, you can't simulate that environment until you're actually in it. And so it's definitely one you kind of mentioned, maybe we're a little shell-shocked at the very beginning, just being in that environment. And it's something that, you got to try to overcome very quickly to be able to fight back and get back in the game. And so, we don't have very many guys that have obviously had that experience. And, they can say, well, I played at this place and, our rivalry, it's nothing like being in Allen Fieldhouse and the crowd at the very beginning of the game. And, it's just deafening, and so I can still hear it. I can still feel it, and so there's nothing like actually being there and then being able to see it yourself.
Yeah. It was a slow start in Lawrence. It was kind of the opposite in Waco. K-State got off to a nice lead up at halftime, double-digit lead in the second half, and then, like we've seen, against Texas Tech at home, against TCU on the road, this team just kind of collapses late. Clint, is Kansas State just not executing down the stretch when it matters most, or is there something a little bit deeper that you're seeing out of these late game letdowns?
Yeah, I mean, down the stretch, last 5 minutes, one can't score the basketball, and then having some open looks and just can't get it to fall, and then the other end can't get stops, and so it's hard to win if you can't do either one, right? I mean, you got to be able to do one or the other at least, and hopefully you can do both. But you look at that game against Baylor, and first half we were really playing inside out. I don't know how many threes we ended up shooting, but I can tell you it was definitely single digits, and the ones we did shoot were good ones from inside out, penetration kick, and we knocked them down. And then you look at the end of the game, we ended up shooting 24. So over half of our shots ended up being threes, which tells you in the second half, we stopped kind of going inside out. And some of that, credit to Baylor, they went to their zone 1-3-1 and tried to force outside shots because they couldn't guard us, and so credit to Coach Drew and kind of how he switched things up. But, we got to be able to find a way to score. You think about 5:19, Hazen makes a three. And from that point on, Coach Tang calls his last timeout. And you could tell because everything kind of was shifting, and you could feel that Baylor was starting to take control of the game. And then Hazen makes a three, he calls his last timeout to kind of reset our guys because he knew, like, hey, if we can't reset right here, I'm not going to need my timeout the last minute of the game. So we're not even going to be close, right? And so kind of reset us. Well, coming out of that timeout, what do? Right out of that timeout, we foul, put them at the free throw line. And the next three possessions, we foul and put them at the free throw line. And so they shoot 2 free throws, make them. Hausman comes down, I think makes another 3. They come back down, we foul, put them right back at the free throw line. We miss, they come back down, we foul, put them at the free throw line. And so we're not even giving our defense a chance to get stops because we're fouling them. They don't even have to make the shot. Like, hey, it doesn't matter what their percentage is. Just go make some free throws, right? And so I thought that was a critical point in the game where 3 straight possessions from 5:19 on, we gave them 6 free points at the foul line just because we couldn't guard, and now it kind of turned the tide, and obviously Baylor was able to take it from there. But those last 5 minutes, Baylor shot, I wrote this down because I couldn't believe it. Baylor shot 14 free throws in the last 5 minutes. They made 11. They only shot 2 field goals because when they got fouled on them, those don't count as field goal attempts. So they went 2 for 2 from the field and 11 to 14 from the free throw line. And you flipped out on our side, we went 2 for 10 from the field and 4 for 6 from the free throw line. So, the game was won, and in the end, they got to the free throw line when they needed to and made it and capitalized, and we couldn't make a shot.
It's kind of a misleading stat. Baylor hit 7 of their last 7 from the field. But when you mention that, Clint, I mean, those 5, the first 5 of those were not nearly into crunch time. So, I asked Jerome Tang after the game if this could be a learning experience just for the guys, how to kind of adjust to the physicality of the way a game is, maybe being officiated. And, Jerome Tang just said they're going to work on everything and learn from everything. But I assume that being physical, getting to the free throw line and playing without fouling moving forward, has to be atop the priorities just in terms of the takeaways from that Baylor game. K-State's got to be much better in that regard. But, Clint, it felt like this was the game, right? For about 30 minutes or so, this was the game for Kansas State to get over a hump. And, there's a fine line in college basketball. And here we are 6 games in a row just talking about yet another loss, Clint.
Yeah, and like I said, it felt like we had everything going our way in the first half, playing inside out. Guys were getting to the rim, scoring. We had a couple outside shots we turned down to drive the basketball. I loved it. Got to the rim, and then like I said, the tide started turning a little bit, and we knew Baylor wasn't going to miss as many shots as they did in the first half. I mean, they were pretty cold in the first half, which played into our favor. But you think if we're putting that much pressure on the rim, we still only got to the free throw line 9 times. We'd like to see us get to the free throw line a little bit more. And then, second half, continue to do some of those things that we did in the first half, and not just rely on Baylor's going to miss shots, but actually force them to miss shots, by playing some really good defense. I thought we switched up our ball screen defense and all game. I thought that was pretty good. We kind of high hedged a lot more. I thought you kind of saw that a couple times. Even Gasson kind of got strung out because he stayed with the guard before I allow our guard to get back in front before he went back to the big, which I think really threw Baylor's rhythm off in the first half, which is probably a reason for some of their bad shooting. So I did like to see that, and I thought that was key because Baylor's really, really good in the ball screen. And I'm sure coming into the game, Coach Drew's like, hey, they're going to be in a drop. We're going to take advantage of this. We're going to be throwing lobs at the rim. And so it kind of threw them off, and it gave us a chance to fight and be in there in the end. But like I said, down the stretch, last 5 minutes, you got to get stops. You can't foul and put the other team on the free throw line, and you got to be able to make some baskets. And then unfortunately, we couldn't get it done.
Let's call it like it is. At 1-6 in the Big 12, that's not the sign of a good basketball team. But there were positives. There truly were positives to take away from the KU game and the Baylor game. Is there one thing or one aspect of the game, whether that's a statistic or just the way it was played, that you are really encouraged with right now, despite the losing streak, Clint?
I think seeing some just adjustments by the guys in game, I think have been good. But I'll start by saying this. I mean, we're 1-6, and I always hear this like, you are what your record says you are. And so we got to figure out a way to change that. And I think mid-game adjustments, some things that kind of went on, I thought were pretty good over the last 2 games. You look at the Baylor game in the first half, they were getting offensive rebounds off the out, and then offensive rebounds second half. I thought we did a little bit better job of that. Against KU, I think once we kind of settled in and started playing kind of our brand of basketball, I thought things were really good. Just we got to be able to sustain it for 40 minutes. And that's the thing we got to be able to do. We've shown flashes where we can do it for small stretches of the game or whatever it might be. But can we do it for a full 40 minutes and everybody be on the same page? And everybody be connected and not worried about their own feelings or their own stats and worried about trying to go figure out how can we win the basketball game on both sides of the floor. That's what I hope to continue to see. I think we started to see some flashes of it, and hopefully we can continue to see that.
Clint, we'll dive into West Virginia and Oklahoma State here in the second half. But before we take a break, during a losing streak like this, I don't know, Clint, if you ever lost 6 in a row or not. I'd have to look. Maybe you remember, maybe you don't. But during tough times like this, especially after a Baylor game where you had it in, I wouldn't say you had it in the bag, but K-State was well within reach to win that game in the second half. How does a team like this just stay focused before it returns home to Bramwich Coliseum on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, you got to reset and realize that we got 2 opportunities at home against 2 teams that we are capable of beating at home, and then kind of focus and shift all the energy towards that, right? And so you can't worry about the past. You can't, be, oh, man, the Baylor game we should have had. You got to, okay, what's next, right? And what's next is West Virginia at home and in a game that's going to be a low possession game. More than likely, West Virginia doesn't score a lot of points. And so we got to go do some of the things that we did well against Baylor, as far as driving the basketball, getting into the paint, sharing the basketball. I think we had 16 assists against Baylor. That's a really good number for us. So do some of those things. And then, like I said, clean up some of the things that we didn't do well. It'll be interesting to see how we guard the ball screen if we continue with some of the high hedging, because I thought that was really good for us. But we still got to rebound the basketball, focus on that, focus on getting to the free throw line, not putting our opponent on the free throw line. And if guys can kind of reset, and then it's just whatever we got to do to win. I mean, that's the only focus is we got to go get one, and then once you get one, you hope that you can use that momentum to get 2, right? And then once you get 2, use that momentum to get 3, and you got to take it, one bite at a time.
Clint, we'll be right back here. We'll break down both of these upcoming games. And before we do that, though, I'd like to touch on a couple players, your guy, Castillo, and then obviously a couple guys that are not contributing for this team and how badly maybe K-State could use them moving forward. But we'll be right back with a quick break here on the Friday Shoot-Around.
It's time to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be back with more from GoPowerCat.com.
Nestled in the heart of beautiful and historic Council Grove, Kansas, Riverbank Brewing is the perfect place to stop before or after the game. Riverbank Brewing, located in downtown Council Grove.
Now let's head back to the show for more K-State sports coverage from GoPowerCat.com.
I don't want to talk about David Castillo just because he is your guy, right? You coached him and all that, but this truly is, fans are pleased with him, the future of K-State's program, getting him playing time right now, especially in Allen Fieldhouse and at Baylor on the road is valuable. what are you really liking out of the youngster in his game right now at this point in the season?
Yeah, I mean, every opportunity is a learning opportunity for him. So, getting the opportunity to get out there on the floor and then playing, obviously early on in his career against, top competition and in hostile environments, it's a learning opportunity for him that he can grow and take mental notes and things. And he's doing a really good job taking care of the basketball better than what he did early on. Starting to make a few shots. I'm sure he hopes to see more shots go through the basket, but he's trying to not make mistakes, right? I think that's what you kind of see. If he's out there, can I keep the ball moving, get the ball to where it needs to go? Can I take the open shots so he can obviously stay on the floor? Which coincidentally, I mean, I know you've been mentioning his plus minus has been really good the last few games. So he's doing things that you would expect for a youngster to do, and then hopefully. Over the course of the rest of the season, you just continue to see him grow and his confidence, and then out there on the floor and be able to make some shots down the stretch. And when the opportunity's there, you got to take advantage of it, and he's starting to do that.
Castillo went through an undeniable shooting slump. Was it thinking too much? Is he pressing too hard defensively, so he's out of gas? Is there something you could pinpoint? I mean, obviously now he's hitting shots. He made 3-pointers in both the Baylor and KU games, but was it just as simple, maybe, Clint, as seeing the ball go through the net once and boom, his confidence is right back where it needed to be?
Yeah, well, I mean, you also have to understand, and the transition for freshmen, a high school player coming in as a freshman, and a high school player where you are getting up 20 plus shots a game, right? And so your misses don't matter as much because you're going to have the volume to make shots, and then coming in as a freshman in the college level, and not all freshmen, right? There's some freshmen that have a little bit more leeway. Obviously, Michael Beasley came in as a freshman, and we're like, yeah, we want you to still get 25 plus shots up. But for me, when I came in as a freshman, I didn't get those 20 shots up, and so it was a little bit different. You kind of still Castillo, right? And so he's trying to take opportunities, and there might be a little bit of hesitation in some spots, because he's just unsure of, should he shoot it or not, and the more confidence he gets in himself on what are good shots and shots that he can shoot and ones that Tang wants him to shoot, I think the better he's going to be down the stretch. And hopefully we're starting to see some of that as well. And and also when you get more minutes, he's gotten a little bit more minutes here as of late, then quite naturally you're going to get a few more opportunities to shoot the basketball and be able to make shots. So not every shot is as big of like, I got to make it or I might be coming out, right? And so you just kind of relax and be able to play basketball the way he always has.
A chore. I don't, and I'm kind of at fault here. We're not talking about maybe his absence enough and, why he left, who's at fault. I'm not interested in blaming either party, but for a player that had won at Samford, had won at the JUCO level before that, a guy that knows how to win, looking bigger picture at this season, if a Chor is playing 25, 30 minutes a game, does this team look differently? How much could this team use a guy like a Chor who was on the roster to start the year?
Yeah, well, I think, before he left the team, it was like a game or two before that, he had, 20 points or so and played really well. I mean, he's very versatile, right? And having him out there and his versatility, be able to make shots from the outside as well as drive the basketball. He's athletic, he plays hard, and so, definitely is a player that we're missing his athleticism. We're missing his ability to score the basketball and even defend and block some shots on the defensive end too. So, that makes a difference. And then every player, has a something they can bring, that can help the team. When you think about last year, obviously we talked about kind of similar situation with Tomlin, right? We lost him and it was a big blow to us. And I think this is very similar, I'm not saying that, hey, we have a tour, we're sitting at 7-0 in the Big 12, not obviously not saying that, but definitely we're better with him on the floor with his ability than him, not playing. And so just wish him the best, obviously. And it's definitely a blow to what could have been.
Buddy Rich is another guy that I think it's no secret that Tang and Rich are not on the same page for whatever reason. What's going on. Again, there's two sides to every story. We don't know, and that's not why I bring this up. I bring this up because if Buddy Rich is playing to his potential and he's playing on the court, he's getting minutes and he's bought in, again, he's another guy that if he's playing Kansas State, is a better team. Would you agree?
I agree. And Buddy is physical, and he's not going to back down to anybody. I think half of his fouls are for pushing someone over or knocking someone over or whatever it might be. And so, obviously his physicality is something that's really good for us. And like I said, don't know what's going on. Obviously, inside the team between him and Tang or whatever it might be. And I just hope that things can get figured out pretty soon. And he buys into what Coach Tang is trying to get him to do, and he can get back out there on the floor because we are a better team when he plays. And the few times he's played, he's played really well. And against Wichita State, he's even making outside shots. And if he's making outside shots, he's saying, "What can't Buddy do?" Right? And so, we just hope that he can get back out there soon.
Coming up on Saturday, it's it's West Virginia, and then Oklahoma State follows after that. But with the Mountaineers here, Clint, a slow-paced team. They've beaten KU, Arizona, Gonzaga. They've got some good wins under their belt. What sticks out when you look at this West Virginia team?
Yeah, I think they can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody. And so, as you mentioned, beating KU at KU, they beat Iowa State at home, and then, but I do think they're vulnerable. I think we're going to have to play really well for sure. They have probably the best guard in the Big 12, or one of the best guards in the Big 12. And Javon Small, he's averaging 19 points per game, second in the Big 12. He gets to the free throw line. He's gotten to the free throw line 45 times, and the Big 12 play or conference play is made 41, which is by far the most of anybody. The next highest is 29 makes. And so he's aggressive, gets to the rim. He doesn't shoot it very well from the outside, but I think he's the head of the snake. And as coaches, we talk about you got to cut off the head of the snake, right? If you cut off the body, the head's still going to move, but you got to cut off the head of the snake, and then everything else will follow. And so we really have to lock in on him and hopefully force him into some turnovers. He came from Oklahoma State. His game against Oklahoma State, which they won, he had 6 turnovers. I'm sure he was trying to press a little bit because he's playing against his old former team. And so we really got to try to cut off the head of the snake, and then hopefully everything else can follow. But got to pack the paint, make them shoot the ball from the outside. No possession game. So we have to take care of the basketball. We cannot turn it over and give them opportunities on the other end, or us not have an opportunity to shoot it because we turned it over. So we got to do a really good job of that. And then, we're dead last in rebounding in the Big 12. So we got to rebound, and we got to be physical and not just get the stop or get the missed shot, but go and rebound it so we can go on the other side of the floor and not give them second chance opportunities.
I'm not saying K-State needs to just play the way that West Virginia wants it to play, but if you're Kansas State, you don't want this to be 80-77 on top. If you're going to win this game, if you're the Wildcats, it's probably going to be a low-scoring game. That's not saying that you have to just play right into what they want you to do, but if you start getting up and down the court and just kind of starting chucking up shots, right? That's not probably going to be the recipe for this win, Clint. Low-scoring game, kind of playing the way that, ironically, West Virginia likes to play is the best way to win.
Yeah, I think some of the things we did against Baylor, especially in the first half, are same type of things we need to do against West Virginia. And so we don't need to take quick shots in the shot clock, unless it's wide open from a penetration kick. In transition, we don't need to take quick shots unless it's like a turnover situation where we have an advantage. But everything else, we need to slow it down, run our offense, move the basketball, get into the paint, maybe turn down some open shots to kick to an even better shot or to get to the rim and get to the free throw line and make it a grind out game. They're really good defensively as well. And so, we want to make sure that, if we can get it to the low 60s, that's kind of where we want it, or high 50s, and I think that's kind of where we want it. We definitely don't want it to be 70, 80 because that means that we're playing at a pace that we're probably not as comfortable doing, especially against a team like them.
We'll wrap up with this, Clint. Keep this one rather short, but Oklahoma State coming up after the Mountaineers. We've already broken down the Cowboys as K-State's already seen them. I guess it's, if K-State wins, you're looking at kind of a different type of game than if they're still on that losing streak. But we've seen this team lose to Oklahoma State. What's it going to take just in this specific matchup to beat that team?
Yeah, I think of that first game, we had 19 turnovers. And so We have to take care of the basketball against them. They made 9 threes against us. Their last game against Arizona, they made 10 threes. So we're going to have to neutralize them from the outside. But also, I think they had one of their bigs had a really good game against us, and I don't have the sheet in front of me, but we're going to have to do a good job of blocking out, rebounding, keeping them off the glass for second chance points. You think with us being at home, we obviously have an advantage there. Oklahoma State has not played a Big 12 game within 10 points yet. So the 2 wins they've had, they've won by more than 10 or more, and the 5 losses have all been by 10 or more. So what I think is, if it's a close game in the Big 12, that's one that they have not had just yet. And hopefully, that can play into our advantage. But we're going to have to score the ball in the last 5 minutes of the game to go win it, right? So if it's a close game and we can't score in the last 5 minutes, it doesn't matter, And so we want it to be close, but we're going to have to figure out a way to continue to get stops on the defensive end and then score the ball in the last 5 minutes to hopefully push us ahead to go win by 10.
To kind of wrap everything up and put everything together, Kansas State loses at TCU a couple weeks back and goes to Stillwater, a game that they let slip away late, and they go to Stillwater and they let that loss linger. And Jerome Tang wasn't pleased with his effort, his team's effort, and K-State didn't play up to its potential in that game. And now you have a loss to Baylor. Again, let it slip away late. So now the response here against West Virginia, I know Oklahoma State's a game after, but the response here, you can't have that response that you had at Oklahoma State following a tough, kind of heartbreaking loss when you had it at the end. You've got to turn the page, and with all due respect, Oklahoma State, in 2 games from now, that's a game that you have to win against bluntly one of the, statistically one of the worst teams in the conference. But defending your home court, especially if you can't beat West Virginia, got to have that one.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, these next 2 are very crucial, and we're at home, and so I hope the K-State fans come out and support and show up and make it a good atmosphere because, I know the team needs it. They need the fans in the stands and giving them some energy to come back and, come back home and hopefully get 2 wins. And, like I said, you never know what can happen. It's, we're sitting at 1-6, doesn't feel good. But this is the point of the season as well where you have 2 winnable games where you have to figure out a way to go win them, and hopefully we can do that and protect our home court. I think Tank talked about protecting the home court, after our very first game. And so got to just figure out a way. And the guys have to be locked in and doing that and do whatever it takes on the defensive end, do whatever it takes communicating, do whatever it takes to push back, do whatever it takes to be physical so they can leave the arena happy and the fans are happy, and that's the goal, right? We want to make sure when we leave Bramlage Coliseum, everyone's high-fiving and it's a good night these next 2 games. So that's the only thing that matters.
Clint, appreciate you as always. We'll be back here next week on the Shoot Around breaking down these next 2 games, win or lose. And I'll end it with this. Jerome Tang he's mentioned this a couple times this year. Baylor was 1-6 or 2-8. An awful start to Big 12 play, and that team went on to go to the Sweet 16. So is Kansas State at that level? Probably not. But if you want to get there, man, the first thing you've got to do is take care of the next game in front of you. That's West Virginia on Saturday, 5:00 in Bramlage Coliseum. Clint, we'll be right back here next week to break down that game and along with the Oklahoma State game. All
right, sounds good.
Thank you for watching the Friday Shoot-Around, sponsored by Riverbank Brewing. This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production.